Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kasparov Chess. I'm Mig Gringard, and what better way to welcome you to Kasparov Chess than with Kasparov himself here. We've got the man, his name, I love it, the man who doesn't even need a last name. It's just his Gary down there under the screen. How you doing, Gary?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, fine. I'm just wondering what will happen with other Garys because I believe we have quite a few of them.
They're
But probably
banned.
most of them will be was one with one R, with I. So I wonder if we have another Gary of with the same spelling.
We're banning anybody else with that name. Sorry, all you Garys out
Yeah,
there.
but it's now okay. Kasparov Chess back. Yes, that's how we met, Miguel.
It is many
You probably should tell a little
years
story.
ago. How many years?
20, yes, two decades ago. Yeah, more than 2 decades ago.
That's a
Yeah,
lot of years. That's a lot of years.
yeah.
But the good news is that video is much better now.
It's much better now, and the access to chess production is far more sophisticated.
Yes,
And again, let's say that's it's a new story of Kasparov chess, and I
absolutely.
believe we are much better positioned, to fulfill our old promises.
Absolutely. So we're looking forward to bringing you guys some great chess as well, not just good video production or audio production, but we have a candidates tournament that has restarted. So perfect way to launch here with world-class chess with world-class stakes here. The winner of this tournament will go on to face Magnus Carlsen for the world title, and there's plenty of chess to come. We had a very strange delay, perhaps without precedent in the history of chess, as so many things are without precedent in this pandemic era. And coming back, they played the first half of the tournament. It's a round robin, all play all, 8 players. They played the first half, and then they not canceled it, postponed it. They had to postpone it for a pandemic so they could come back and play face to face over a year later. You've played a marathon match, but you didn't get a year break exactly.
We no, we had a couple of matches with Karpov that had breaks. In '86 we played London, Leningrad.
Okay.
In 1990 we played New York, Lyon.
Mm-hmm.
But the breaks were, I think it's a couple of weeks in '86, and I think but about the same probably between New York and Lyon in 1990. I mean,
Okay.
we're talking about one full year.
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
but it was quite
it's.
an unusual year because it was a year on lockdown, and
Mhm.
that's why there was not much chess happening at all. Um, and I think people already forgot about classical chess. It's just
Right.
it's,
Does
it's
online
it was
chess prepare you for this? Because these guys have been playing, but it's all been rapid blitz on the internet. I mean, now suddenly you're back face to face. You have to remember how to shake hands. I mean, it's got to be jarring.
are they allowed to shake hands?
Okay, maybe they're doing elbow bumps or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Now look, it's a full year, and again, they don't definitely didn't waste their time. I'm
yeah,
sure they spent endless hours and days and weeks preparing for the tournament. But still, uh, I don't I wouldn't like to be in their position because you just it's technically it's a second round. It's
right. The second
uh,
half, yeah,
second half of the tournament, but it looks to me like it's just a new short 7 round tournament,
right.
round robin. Yes, of course they have the scores. They know who has the best chance to move forward and who is lagging behind. And I think some players like Dink, for instance, they were not happy with the performance. But still, it's just this gap. Definitely had this very serious psychological impact on
Hmm.
the players. But again, it's just chess is chess, classical chess is classical chess, and I'm quite happy to see that despite all the doomsday scenarios and predictions about the end of classical chess, we have no reasons to complain about games being dull today.
No. No, absolutely, and of importance. It looked like what might turn into 4 draws instead turned into two, and two decisive marathon games that lasted basically as long as you can last in these 7 hours almost, I believe. And one, of course, with the most thrilling game, but also the most important for the standings. But we should get a quick mention in of another game. The player who was in last place, Alexenko, managed to somehow turn the tables there. It looked like against his countryman Grishchuk there, and
But you just said 4 draws. I think when people hear the word draw in chess, I mean they got upset. But it could be a draw and a draw. Imagine Alexei Grishuk would be a draw.
Right.
Caruana MVL a draw. Can you just throw stone on these players, saying, oh, this is bad, this game doesn't deserve, just to be mentioned. It's bad. No, they were great games.
Sure.
And I know it's happened that Grishuk overplayed his hand, and MVL cracked under this tremendous pressure in the end game, which was not easy to defend. But we'll have a close look at the game. But just one word about Alexeyenko. And also, there were two uneventful draws, so we probably should mention
those.
Them.
We can throw stones at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
No, but look, the two Chinese players, you expect them just Ding had no aspirations probably just anymore. He's desperately behind, and Van Hao recognizes that he's not of a caliber to actually challenge other players. Though again, he's close to the leaders. And he still can surprise anybody. And Nepomniachtchi Giri wanted to play safe, and Giri played black. So that's why again it's not about beauty contest. It's about winning the tournament. And I think Giri definitely has ambitions to compete for the first spot. Now Alexeyenko Grishuk was an interesting game, and I think Grishuk probably got a slightly better position, but he overplayed his hand. And Alexeyenko was very creative, resourceful, sacrificing exchange and having a very powerful bishop. And then, when position was equal, but I think Grishuk probably got panicked. And, we should congratulate Alexeyenko with a high quality victory over one of the top players.
Right.
But of course, everything is a prelude to the big game, the game of the day, Caruana MVL. One thing about the game is, I believe that was the game that that's the best prepared game in the history of chess, because the both opponents had 1 year to prepare. Yeah, and we know that those both players are known for their very thorough opening preparation.
Right.
But these days it's not just opening preparation. People used to say Kasparov played Karpov. Karpov had a team. Kasparov had a smaller team, but they were grandmasters. Now they had grandmasters and computers. This is
how many CPUs are on your team?
Yeah, exactly. I wonder, how many literally weeks. I'm not talking about hours and days. Weeks have been spent on analyzing these lines in this Najdorf Sicilian.
Ooh.
Because in the Caruana MVL, you may not know the result, hard to guess, but you definitely know the opening. It will be Najdorf, and high probability, most likely Caruana plays bishop g5. He goes for a kill, for the sharpest line, and MVL plays different lines there, but his preference is queen b6, poison pawn line. So, and those are very sharp positions, just from the start, and it's hard to imagine that one player could actually surprise another, but that's what happened in that game. It was the sharpest line of the sharp line. So white sacrificed more pawns. I think that's it's a line that was invented by Rajabov. The idea of the play rook
d1, right?
Yeah, it's probably we should go just to look at this.
Go ahead and go to the board and
We just should look at the screen. So just to make sure that everybody follows this. So so as I said, Najdorf. E4, C5, knight f3, D6, D4.
Yeah, feel free to jump ahead in there. I know, folks, we're just trying to make sure you can follow along a little bit. We're not going to get too deep into variations, but of course, if you need somebody who's an expert on the Najdorf, you've come to the right place, and I don't mean me. So Gary, of course, played the Najdorf very, very faithfully for many, many years. I can't remember when your very first Najdorf would have been, but you certainly played it till the end.
Probably, you just the first Najdorf I played, probably you were just, in elementary school maybe.
Yes, when you were already a master. Great. Thanks for reminding us of. They were reminding us of that. So, all right. So here we go. We call it the poisoned pawn. That's a
poisoned pawn,
common phrase in chess.
Pawns and,
can you get away with the queen grabbing that pawn on b2 or not? Is the eternal question of this line.
Yeah, but look, Black, keeps taking the pawns, and that's it's an old line. It's from the 50s, and that was one of the beautiful games. If you are interested online, you can find it in my great predecessors. It's Tal Tolush, and Tal played Rook B3, and it's just proved to be that not very effective because Black can check on A1 and go back on A4 with a queen, and then Queen actually has this eye on the bishop, so that's why all knight sacrifices do not work. That's why H6 is very important. But the idea of Rook D1, as I said, it's most likely it's invented by Rajabov, and it's I remember that in 2004 we played in Linares, and all of a sudden he played E4, move one. Typically he played D4 these days, and I didn't know what to expect, and I decided to play E5, and we played Scotch, and he narrowly escaped. I had winning position but failed to deliver. And then I just, I found out because I think he played it. That's the idea was to play Rook D1. I'm not sure it was him, but it's the line became very, very popular.
Right.
So and of course Black goes back with the Queen on D5, Queen E3, Queen takes E5, and here is just Bishop G3. There's so many lines, so many games. It's endless analysis.
Yeah.
And Caruana made a very, very strange move. When you see somebody playing C3,
right, instead of the bishop,
but it's just
to E2, right?
Psychologically, yes, you have 3 pawns down, three pawns down. So, and Black position is it's not an immediate mate. Black king is so far well protected. White is ahead in development, but still, king only one. So the two ideas. So you can play, a bishop G3 attacking the queen, or you can play bishop E2 and castle.
Right.
Just to finish development. Why the honors to play C3? And it's a very rare move. And MVL play bishop C5, get very natural. Why not develop the piece and prepare the castle? But pay attention. Black king will never castle in this game. It's just one move. But bishop G3, queen D5. And it looks, that's black. Black is fine again. 3 pawns,
right.
And here is something phenomenal happens. Again, I wish you could say this is great human creativity. Tal
inspiration came to me in a dream.
Yeah, exactly. But that was not Tal. Tal would be delighted. I wish Mikhail Mikhailovich could see this game, and I'm sure he will be probably crying, just watching the game. I know why crying. Because then, you would recognize that it was not entirely human idea, but the machine
right.
was behind it. So bishop c4, just sacrificing a piece. Now queen takes c4, and quiet move bishop d6.
Right, amazing.
White
just amazing.
Sacrificed 3 pawns, a bishop, and played a quiet move. Bishop d6. All the move does, it cuts the black king from castling, and creates problems.
Right.
And the serious attack. So simply taking on d4 will not work because rook takes on d4, then bishop goes back on this diagonal, so could go on b4 or a3, and then knight d6 could be decisive. And by the way, white king is ready to castle. So I kept saying that it's machine, but let's not forget, MVL had access to the same, if not more, computing power.
Right.
So it's not that you had one player and one team having access to computers, and another one was just doing it with the wooden chess pieces. So that's actually tells us that it's not enough to look at the computer screen. You need to add a little bit of human creativity. This the grain of humanity. So just to use this imagination. And I don't know who invented it, Caruana himself, Kasimdzhanov, or someone else who worked with them. But it's hats off. It's phenomenal,
right.
And it's even more of achievement because they face MVL, who, as we know, spent a full year preparing for this game. Because this is not just an ordinary game between Caruana and MVL. This is the game that could decide their tournament standing.
Right, because this is important for the standings. You got to remember,
absolutely.
If people don't know the standings, MVL was tied for first, right, with Nepomniachtchi Caruana just right behind. So now he actually catches up.
Full point behind.
Right.
Full point behind.
Full point, right.
Yes.
So now he catches up with MVL and actually has the tiebreak over him. So that's a biggie.
Exactly.
They're still both behind Nepomniachtchi.
yeah, for Caruana not to win the game
Yeah.
probably could be the end,
Yeah.
of his ambitions. Yeah, it will be very difficult because there are 5 players that still, can compete for tournament victory, and Caruana, would not do well in this crowd. Again, just being a full point
Right.
behind MVL and Nepomniachtchi. So Caruana needed to win. MVL knew that winning the game could make him a clear favorite, but surviving the game was very important to preserve his leading position and to prevent Caruana from gaining ground. So that's why the game was so important, and I think MVL, when it's happened with Bishop C4 and Bishop D6, I think he was, I wouldn't say devastated, but he definitely didn't feel well. And you can look at his clock.
Right.
Caruana played blitz. MVL typically plays very fast, spend a lot of time. But he found probably best moves. Knight F6. Black gives up the piece. Knight takes C5 and Knight D5.
Right.
And Queen D5. And now Black can take on C3 with a check, but that's not a good idea because White King goes on F2 and still, same problems. And then Rook goes from H1 to E1, and it's a total domination. So
Wow.
Black wisely, refrained from taking the pawn and play Rook G8. And now that's another brilliant, move. Knight D takes E6,
Oh my gosh.
F takes E6, Knight E6. It sounds, that Black is doing fine. Queen takes E3 check, take. Knight takes E3.
Right, you get the queens off the board, right? You're thinking,
queens
oh,
off
I
the
finally
board.
got the queens off the board. Now I still have
Queens off the
material.
board. And
Yeah.
No. Black still has 1 extra piece and 2 pawns.
Yeah.
And queens off the board. And White has only 1 check, Knight C7. But it's Black has to make a choice where to go. I didn't have time to look at all these complications, but I believe that King D7 was analyzed at depth by Caruana's team. And after still White plays Rook D3, and it's inevitably Black is losing some material, and Black King is under tremendous pressure.
Yeah.
So
my eyes keep going to the Rook, Knight, and Bishop of the Black Queen side, totally unmoved, and that's just something that straight out of the textbooks.
King F7, then Rook D3, and I don't know, could he play now Rook A7? I doubt very much because then Castle take on C3. Probably it would be decisive attack because for Black it's just to develop all the pieces. That would take almost forever, and White will be organizing very powerful attack. Again, you have your computer, try to check it. I think that MVL wisely, decided not to test Caruana's analysis, played Knight E4, then Castle, King G6, Knight takes A8.
Come on, we got to give a shout out for castling with check on move 27.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
That's not something that happens every day.
No. I can remember 2 games where I made castle after move 30.
Wow.
With Miles.
Okay.
Game 1 in our match in 1986, and with Nigel Short in Belgrade 1989. I played with Black, so I think with Miles it was a long castle at move 34 or so, and with Nigel was a short castle around move 30.
Right.
So now the dust settled. We have an endgame. Yeah, technically the material is almost equal because Black has a knight and 2 pawns for a rook. But the pawns are actually on the wrong side. If they had at least 1 pawn on the king side, the game probably would be a draw. It's nice to have 2 passed pawns, but the passed pawns are not much help, especially at the starting positions against rooks. If you have a knight and 2 pawns, it's not advanced pawns. It just doesn't do any good, and the pawns are really weak because your king goes on the other side. Okay. So, but still. Pawns are pawns, and rook, still needs time to win these pawns, and knight, has to come out from A8. So that's his MVL played Knight C6, Knight B6, and decided so that he would give up the bishop. And now it seems to me that White has a good winning chances, but whether it's won or not remains to be seen. And I think MVL did well defending the position, recognizing that he will have to give up the pawns on the queen side and create some sort of a fortress here on the king side. So after bishop a3, rook c7,
Rook f4. He just came back on f6. Bishop b2, and knight e7. That's the correct move. So took on f6. G takes f6. Now that's, by the way, it looks optically not good for black, but actually it's good because when knight or bishop facing the rook, it's better to have a pawn that is not on the same line. It improves your chances for the fortress if it's one-on-one. So technically, if h pawns disappear, then you'd better have the pawn on f6 and on g7.
Okay.
That's offers you better defensive chances, because this pawn controls some squares and prevents white king to be activated. So h4, h5, rook g3, king f7, and rook g5. Caruana uses rooks, to attack, and then rook c1 check, king h2, knight g6, and now has gone rook f2, and it takes on h4, rook takes h5, knight g6. Now, and he's losing one pawn now, but as I said, he lost one pawn. He knows a6 pawn is doomed, but it's now he got the position he wanted. Now he had this.
He was kind of aiming for a fortress here.
Yep. Exactly. Rook b6, rook c6, take, king g3, king f7, rook c2. Now, when I looked briefly at this position during the game, so I wasn't sure whether it's draw or not. I didn't have just access to a database. Instinctively, I thought it should be a draw, but it depends, how black, organizes its fortress, where the knight goes. Now, there's one problem for black is that the white pawn is still on g2. If white pawn was on g4, that was easy because the pawns are too close, and pawn on g4 would prevent white king, having the maneuver from h5, from g4 h5 to go around black's fortress. And also, when pawns are closer, knight can attack or king can immediately attack. So exchange of pawns is more likely. Having pawn on g2 improves white chances because the g file is open, and in the game, Caruana used it very wisely. And also, it's more difficult for black to actually sacrifice f pawn and just to go for white pawn. So exchanging pawns is difficult. So that's why it's important how they locate their knight. And while the knight before move is not losing, that's definitely a move in the wrong direction. I think MVL still couldn't figure it out. And it seems that from database and also from common sense, you'd rather keep your knight next to the king. And I think ideal locations would be e7 or g7, which is also interesting. Typically you want knight to be protected by the pawn, so e5, g5, but those squares are not important because you need to protect f5 square for white king just not to appear there. So e7, g7 are ideal, and it makes, I think, almost impossible for white to penetrate this fortress. Personally, I would put my knight on g7 because that definitely kills all ideas with king g4, king h5, and database confirms that the game would be draw. I think MVL still had chances to go back to the right setup.
Right.
And until move 55, the game was by the opinion of a machine, and we know that machine is God in these kind of end games. The game was still a draw, but then he missed his chance, and Caruana found a very nice way of
infiltrating. He kind of he's worked his king in there. Yeah,
exactly. But it's exploiting the wrong setup. So that's he found a way to infiltrate. Going one side and another side. And again, very very. He was skillfully using the open G file both for the rook and the king.
Right. So a big win for the American, who the previous challenger, by the way, who played.
Yeah, very 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 big win, and it's not just a win; it's a psychological blow for MVL. Just to lose the game, and it's not just to lose the game, but to it's losing it twice because I think he was devastated in the opening,
right?
Because he was out prepared, so it's just outgunned in the opening,
right?
And that was psychological blow one,
right. And then he fought back all the way back, so close.
Exactly, he nearly survived.
Yeah.
He nearly survived against all the odds, and all he needed is just to find the right setup for his knight in this end game, and that could be a big victory for him if he had survived, and that would be a big blow to Caruana. But that didn't work out. And by the way, that's another message to young players. You can spend all the time in this world for opening preparation, but never ignore the end games, because many games could still be decided in the end game, and learning them can always save you a very valuable half a point.
Right, and you could use all those CPU cycles instead of for opening preparation. MVL could have been mining Bitcoin or something, could have made more money than he'd get from the candidates, by now.
Look, we don't know what would be the sort of the final score of the tournament, but now what we know is that Caruana definitely has wind in his sails, and MVL tomorrow faces Ding. Yep. Who, as I said, probably has no big ambitions in the tournament. He's lagging behind, but is a great player, and MVL has to survive. So I don't think he can win tomorrow with black pieces, but surviving will be important, because if he loses tomorrow, he's out of race. Okay. And also, we should see what happens in the Caruana game. He's playing Alexeyenko, who is also very encouraged by today's victory.
Right. So today's winners play each other tomorrow, right?
Yes. And again, every game is important. So we should look at Nepo and we should look at Giri. So actually, I'm curious to see if Giri can do something with white.
Okay.
So that's time for if he wants to be taken seriously in the tournament, he has to do something with white pieces. So every day will offer, I'm sure, some kind of entertainment for us, and every day, Mig and I will be here to tell you what's happened.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure. Great to be back in the saddle here. Kasparov Chess, bringing you the recap from Gary, as his title says. Great to see you. And we'll be back at it tomorrow here with another recap. Might even be able to get it in a little earlier once we get some of the kinks worked out here. So hopefully that can take place. And we'll be back with another round recap, hoping for some more fighting chess. Are you calling anything? You placing any money on anybody?
No.
Not a betting man.
I'm not placing any money. No, not. I'll be enjoying as everybody else. So I want to see what happens, because I was truly impressed today by the fighting spirit, and it's a great start of the tournament, and I have no doubt that the rest of the tournament will not be a disappointment.
All right. Fantastic stuff. You can follow along here. Check it out on Twitter at Kasparov Chess, or, of course, KasparovChess.com. And we'll be right back at it here tomorrow with Gary Kasparov. Have a good night, Gary.
Good night.